thought I'd take a couple of minutes and introduce the general theme here as we are looking forward, I guess, to moving out of COVID and just what we'll have to sustain us moving forward. Well, this is a piece of work that came across my radar probably about 10 or 12 years ago. It was based on some of Malcolm Gladwell's work, and it was about how a community in America that had its roots in Italy seemed to defy many of the odds when it came to their well-being, their community well-being. So what I'd like to do is just to run some of the ideas past you, so you can just take a look at it and maybe think what it might mean for us now, but also to accept that this isn't an unchallenged piece of research. So if you were to check it out on Google, you'd find that there are articles that challenge the findings, and that seems fair enough. But maybe draw your own conclusions, because the figures that are quoted seem to be quite astonishing, and they also have their base in some good research. So please enjoy, and feel free to get back to us if you'd like to raise any questions or discuss how this could be applied to your particular context and circumstances. Thank you. Quite honestly, there are times I could turn that around and say most folks are as miserable as they make their minds up to be as well. And maybe there is an element of choice that it's quite difficult and sensitive to explore, but if we maybe reflect on our own experiences of ourselves and others, we can find examples where people have been incredibly positive and forward-facing in what seem to be the most dire of circumstances. So a very readable book, very enjoyable book that focuses on how success has been achieved, sometimes by quite unusual routes, not the way that we would normally choose, but the results have been outstanding. It's well worth looking at, very accessible. Well, this fell across the radar of a researcher in the 50s, I think it was, and in Roseto we could see people who were dying of old age. I thought that was it, and at that time America was in the teeth of an epidemic of heart attacks. And when we took a look at parallel communities, we are actually talking about the one up the road, where the national average was the norm. In Roseto, have a look, nobody under 55 died of a heart attack or showed any signs of heart disease, and the over 65s alive, that was half above the US average. And then we can take a look at the death rate itself from all causes, 30 to 35% lower than the US average. And while you're taking in some of that information there, I'll just tell you the background story of Roseto. If you want any more, then you really do need to buy the book. It came from a community in Italy, and I believe they were a slate quarrying village. There wasn't a lot of money to be made there, and at the time of mass migration from Italy to America, people made their way to America and eventually founded and established the village. They sent for their relatives to join them, and eventually the village in Italy fell into disrepair, and virtually the whole community was now resident in America, hence the name of the village, Roseto. They named it after their village back in Italy. So there was a powerful sense of community there anyway. But let's just take a look at the list above there. I mean, we can see that that's almost a list of social conditions and medical conditions to say, yes please. So what fantastic health kit were these people on? What was brilliant about their diet that kept them alive? What was it to do with their exercise? Well, let's take a look, shall we, and see what emerges. And here we go. No health kick, in fact a bit of a counter health kick going on here. Let's take a look at where those calories are coming from what was considered at the time to be a major contributor to heart disease, the much lauded Mediterranean diet. And it's not my job to criticise it here, and that's certainly not the case, but they'd given that up years ago. What else was going on? Well, many were overweight. No particular exercise regime followed in the community, and many of them smoked. So if you take a look at those three, it's almost an index for an early death, isn't it? But that certainly wasn't the case in Roseto. So what was going on that may have been giving this community some sort of protection, some sort of immunity from the normal health patterns that could have been expected at that time in the States? Let's see. It might well be worth contrasting what you're seeing here to what's actually happening to most of us now. So let's take them one at a time. Family eats together, and I'd like you to think about just what sort of communications take take place around a table, what sort of values we can pass on, what sort of stories we can tell, and how we can actually begin to validate each other's existence. And people actually took time to speak to each other. Stopping in the street, having that conversation, and the sharing of time together was seen as a very important facet of their day-to-day lives. When I'm talking about the unifying effect of the church here, I see the church, where people assemble in the name of belief, as an important focal point. And again, it's about the sharing of values, it's about the sharing of ideas, and certainly the sharing of practical help for each other, the awareness of what needs to be done to make somebody's life a little bit easier. And that might be just some practical help you can give, or it might be some help of presence and being there with them, or giving time and space to listen to them. 22 separate civic organisations. What am I talking about there? Opera societies, drama societies, poetry societies, reading groups, sewing groups, knitting groups, embroidery groups, and on we go, for a population of 2,000. So, that's quite something, isn't it? There was also a very strong social pressure there, that if you were doing well, that's fantastic, good for you, don't strut it. Let's just keep it in good order, and if you're not doing well, you can expect some help from us to maybe protect you from the glare of your own shortcomings, and we can work with you, we can work together to get through that. So if you will, just compare and contrast that to how we're living now, and I'm sure you'll come up with some observations that are quite telling in the questions they require us to ask of ourselves: what we're doing, why we're doing it, and perhaps the damage it's having on our health and well-being. And by that I mean, of course, our physical well-being and our emotional well-being. Okay, thanks for spending a bit of time with me. I hope you found that interesting. There certainly are some issues there, aren't there, for how we can maybe consider how we develop different sorts of communities. We are, of course, in a different place at a different time, but that maybe shouldn't stop us from thinking about what potential we have to reach out and engage with each other for our own emotional, psychological and social well-being. Thanks for your time.